on when you're joining us from. Really happy to have you all join us. It's proving to be a very exciting session already. My name is Safia Virji, and I have the pleasure of moderating this session today. I work with the Kenya Red Cross Society as the innovation lead. And personally, I am really looking forward to the conversations and discussions and presentations that we're about to hear on the issue of plastic pollution, humanitarian operations, and innovative and sustainable partnerships. So humanitarian organizations use plastic for multiple purposes during our operations, during our responses, and very rarely is there a sustainable waste management system to address the plastic waste that comes from our operations. But having said that, there are a lot of efforts that are being put in place by donor agencies, partners, humanitarian organizations to walk the talk. So as humanitarian organizations, we promote this concept of plastic waste pollution and good plastic waste management. And we need to also make sure that our systems, our operations are also using sustainable materials, approaches, and methods. So today we're going to hear from several organizations around the world on what they've been doing in regards to plastic waste management in humanitarian situations and circumstances. And then we're also going to look at the important aspects of humanitarian partnerships to address and implement plastic waste management approaches. And then finally, we're going to discuss a way forward on what does the future look like for humanitarian organizations, for our partners, and for the donor agencies. And then towards the end, we're going to have about 30 minutes for question and answers. So keep your questions coming in. We might not have time for all of them, but I'm sure the participants and the speakers will find a way to share with you their contact information and get back to you. So the more questions, the better. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to take this opportunity to invite Ambassador Tina Smith to give us our welcome address. Over to you, Ambassador.
Thank you so much. And just checking that you both hear me and see me. I've had a problem with the different platforms this morning.
Yes, we can.
Are we okay? Excellent. Thank you so much. And good afternoon, colleagues and friends. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. It's also a pleasure to see that so many people from all corners of the world have decided to join and are interested and engaged in the issue of plastic pollution. I wish you all welcome wherever you are attending from. Green and innovative humanitarian response is a key focus area for Norway. This is linked to renewable energy as part of our development priorities, and climate, peace and security as a priority area for our engagement in the Security Council, now as an elected member. Here in Geneva, we recently co-organized a dialogue series together with Switzerland, Geneva Environment Network and other partners called the Geneva Beat Plastic Dialogues. The dialogue series included 8 well-attended events over a 4-month period, ranging from health and human rights to standards and trade. The series clearly showed the global attention and willingness to address the issue of plastic pollution and its intersection with relevant actors and agencies. Regardless of where you live on the planet, plastic pollution affects you in one way or another. The problem is largely due to the lack of good governance and that the management of plastics across the whole life cycle has been under-regulated. The amount of plastic waste generated is expected to double by 2040. Mismanaged plastic waste is an important source of plastic pollution to the environment and the ocean, causing a threat to ecosystems, livelihoods, and human health. Vulnerable groups suffer the most from these problems. And as we will hear more about today, This is a significant challenge for the humanitarian sector. As part of our efforts, Norway finances innovation projects focusing on more sustainable and more environmentally friendly solutions within humanitarian aid. Since 2014, we have pushed for stronger global commitment to address marine plastic litter and plastic pollution with the new global agreement as the most effective solution. In February, during the 5th UN Environment Assembly online session, we heard many voices speaking out in favor of a new global agreement, and the first ever ministerial conference on marine plastic litter and plastic pollution was announced by Germany, Ghana, Ecuador, and Vietnam. This shows that there is a willingness to make progress to tackle the environmental consequences of plastic pollution. As we highlighted in the dialogue series, there is no vaccine against plastic pollution. But the latest developments have brought us further towards solutions to one of the fastest growing environmental crises of our time. We need to continue to share our knowledge and explore solutions together. States, academia, humanitarian organizations, affected communities, and private sector actors all need to be involved. With this meeting, as part of the ongoing Humanitarian Network and Partnership Week, we bring together actors who have made progress in terms of innovative partnerships between humanitarian organizations and private actors. We wish to thank Innovation Norway, Geneva Environment Network, and all partners who are contributing here today. I look forward to the discussions and hope that this session can contribute to new connections and information exchange about good ways forward and further inspiration for us all in addressing this global plastic crisis. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. And it's really great to hear you talk about partnerships. I think it's really important. Plastic waste pollution is a challenge and a problem across the world, and it's something that we can address together from a policy level and regulation level to all the way down to the individual. So thank you so much for those opening remarks. Next up, we have Anna Maria Livak from the ICRC, who will talk to us about the plastic challenge in humanitarian response. Over to you, Anna.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good morning to everybody. Welcome to this session. And thank you for having me today. I'm really happy to set the stage for this session. And I would like to start with a few facts and figures about the global plastic crisis. Because as you know, plastic pollution has become one of the most pressing environmental issues. As rapidly increasing production, the use of plastic products overwhelms the world's ability to deal with them. So globally, we produce about 300 million tons of plastic every year, and this number is growing as the production of plastic is growing as well. About 40% of plastic produced is packaging, used just once and then discarded. Only about 9% of plastic is recycled globally. Every year, about 8 million tons of plastic waste escapes into the oceans. On top of that, plastic doesn't biodegrade. Once disposed of, it breaks down into smaller fragments that linger for centuries in nature. So these numbers might be hard to comprehend or to visualize, but these facts, I think, and the pollution that we witness with our own eyes every day clearly indicate that preventing plastic waste is really an emergency. If we can go to the next slide, please. So like in everyday life, plastic is ubiquitous in humanitarian sector and poses a great challenge. And as Safia already said, plastic is used for so many purposes in different forms, including relief items and their packaging. So, tarpaulins, jerry cans, sanitary items, so to name a few. In assistance programs, in construction, for water and habitation programs, in our health programs as medical and pharmaceutical plastics and agroplastics in economic security programs, to our support activity. So plastic in IT and telecom, automotive plastics, plastic in offices, such as stationary or single-use plastics, among others. So for some of these plastics, for example, those in use the offices, humanitarian organizations have more control over the consumption and the end-of-life management. For other uses, such as assistance programs, and the challenge is much bigger. Another issue that's connected with that, and already mentioned by Safia as well, is that we don't really have a clear idea of what is the plastic footprint of the humanitarian sector. There's really no accurate data on how much plastic is generated, what type of plastic, where does it end up, but we can assume that that is distributed will eventually end up in nature or in landfill. This is because in many countries, if not in most of them where we operate, there is a lack of sufficient infrastructure, management systems, or technological solutions to handle waste. So the affected population and local communities don't have the capacity to deal with the waste accumulating in their environment. And at the same time, they're the most vulnerable groups that are most affected by pollution and environmental degradation. Because plastic harms ecosystems, wildlife, pollutes air, water, and soil, and these are vital resources on which people depend for their health and well-being and livelihoods. So really preventing plastic pollution is not only about protecting the environment, but also about protecting and caring for people. If we can go to the next slide, please. So in the face of these challenges, the humanitarian actors are looking for ways to reduce plastic waste generation and manage it responsibly. Multi-layer intervention seems to be most promising strategy for confronting the plastic issue. I would like to share with you a few ways of addressing the plastic problem using examples of ICRC initiatives. A good place to start is to reduce the impact internally. So in line with the practice what you preach principle. Preventing plastic waste and ensuring responsible management in support activities can be done in different ways. It can be done by eliminating unnecessary plastic, by replacing single-use items with reusable items. For example, our regional delegation in Abidjan, which organizes a lot of training, seminars, and meetings, ban completely plastic cups and bottled water in the offices and in these meetings and seminars. Opting for renewable, recyclable, or recycled materials where possible. Setting up recycling systems in contexts where the infrastructure exists. And this is what many ICRC delegations have done as part of the sustainable delegation process. As I mentioned before, packaging accounts for about 40% of global plastic. It has a big potential for plastic use reduction, and the ICRC logistics has been looking into this opportunity. Thanks to eliminating excessive plastic packaging for tarpaulins, jerry cans, and kitchen sets, we save about 53 tons of plastic per year. We are also exploring ways to recycle packaging. Our economic security and logistics colleagues in Lebanon are piloting a polypropylene rice bags recycling project. So the empty bags will be used as raw material for manufacturing crates for agricultural crops. Product eco-design and quality assurance are other ways of reducing plastic waste. Using less plastic or more durable materials in product design and manufacturing can help promote the product lifespan and reduce the amount of plastic used. So the ICRC logistics have been working with suppliers with these objectives in mind to improve some of the most commonly distributed relief items, such as jerry cans, buckets, or edible oil packaging, or tarpaulins. For the plastic that can be avoided, sustainable treatment solutions need to be identified. Integrating these solutions into assistance programs and applying principles of circular economy is an added value. The ICRC engaged in community-based plastic recycling project in Dadaab refugee camp and in prison in Panama, supporting the refugees and detainees in removing the plastic waste from their environment and recycling it. We are now looking for more opportunities to apply this inclusive circular economy approach to tackling plastic. And finally, substituting plastic with sustainable alternatives is another important venue to explore. There's a need for better understanding what plastic alternatives are suitable for humanitarian needs, for what activities and what aid products. Another important question is, are bio-based and biodegradable plastics a viable option? Are there any other innovative materials that we could use to replace plastic? These are some of the questions we hope to answer as part of the tarpaulin projects launched together with the UNHCR and IFRC and the polypropylene bags alternative project. You will have an opportunity to hear more about this project and also other interesting projects launched by other organizations in a moment. That's why I would like to stop here. And with that, I would like to thank you and give the word to the fellow presenters. And I'm looking forward to hear about their interesting projects. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Anna. It was really interesting to learn about some of the initiatives from the ICRC. And we look forward to the presentation that's coming up as well.
Thank you.
So we haven't heard the last from you yet. So next up, we have Clotilda Nakuyene from CARE Uganda, who will speak to us about a refugee plastic program. Over to you, Clotilda.
Okay, thank you so much. So our project is the Camp Plus project, which is implemented in the southern western part of Uganda within the Changwali refugee settlement. So this refugee settlement hosts 126,000 refugees. So you can imagine that, plastic is in plenty within the refugee settlement and the surrounding host communities. So CARE, together with private sector partners, the Leisure Group based in Denmark, and then a local company, Takataka Plastics, based in the northern part of Uganda, we have come up with a solution where we are turning plastic waste into valuable products that can be sold on the market. So we are looking into products that can be used at household level, such as plastic plates or hangers or pegs for hanging clothes. We are also looking at producing items that can be used on farms, such as poles and lumber, that can, for example, substitute wood for fencing or staking crops. In terms of construction materials, we are looking into producing roofing tiles, which would, of course, help to substitute the tarpaulins that are used for roofing at the moment within the refugee settlement, but also producing the size of lumber and poles that can also substitute the use of timber in construction. In terms of collection of plastic, we have been using the house-to-house approach, where the employees of the plastic upcycling unit move from home to home to collect this plastic. The households have been told to sort waste, so it makes it easier to pick out the plastic from this kind of waste and then use the rest of the waste for other purposes. We have also established linkages and contacts with organizations within the refugee settlement that are providing relief items in plastic containers. So these ones collect the plastic containers for us, and then we move over and collect the plastic. In future, we know that the amount of plastic in the refugee settlement might go down. So we are looking into purchase of plastic even beyond the refugee settlement. In terms of producing the products that I talked about, we have set up a solar-powered plastic upcycling unit where all the collected plastic is cleaned, shredded, melted, and molded into useful products. The unit has a total of 6 employees, and all these are refugees. In terms of governance, the unit is managed by a 9-member management committee, and these provide oversight and make the critical decisions for the site. For marketing, we are considering retail, selected points within the refugee settlement. And in future, we are also looking at selling at wholesale, where we shall probably look into the aspect of certification of our products. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Clotilda. It was really interesting to learn about a practical solution being done in refugee camps in Uganda. I'm sure there are quite a few questions. I have a few of my own, but we'll leave them till the end. But really interesting. Thank you. So up next, we have Egil Rexton from Engineers Without Borders Norway, and he's a program manager there. Over to you.
Hello, and thank you, Safia, and thanks to all for taking the time to be here today. My name is Egil Reksten, and with Engineers Without Borders Norway, I lead the Waste for Warmth project. In this project, we work together with technology provider Polyfloss Factory and the NGO Field Ready, working on local responses in humanitarian crisis. We're working to develop small-scale manufacturing capacities for shelter winterization. In the Middle East alone, millions of displaced people live in temporary shelters, and among the many challenges they face is a lack of protection against the cold. Existing shelter heating solutions are costly and energy intensive, and current approaches to assistance rely heavily on distribution of blankets, stoves, and fuel. There's also a substantial plastic waste problem from the humanitarian operations that you all know too well. The Polyfloss machine that you can see illustrated here heats and spins plastic waste into a mass of plastic fibers, encapsulating air and providing insulating qualities. Our challenge is to further develop this small and field-friendly machine, and also to design a safe-to-use plastics-based insulation panel that can be integrated with the existing tents and structures. So we've currently tested this machine in Paris, showing 6 kilos an hour throughput. And we've also tested insulation panels, panel prototypes in shelters in Oslo, showing up to 40% reduction in fuel consumption for heating of the shelters. With our partner Field Ready, we are now setting up a field manufacturing pilot in Gaziantep, Turkey, where we aim to demonstrate a sustained operation at scale involving displaced people in a livelihood program, operating machines, and also stimulating a local market and use for recycled plastics. We will also work with shelter experts and end users to further develop these installation products. We're now looking to connect and partner with NGOs and humanitarian organizations anywhere in the world who would be interested in developing livelihood and winterization programs using this machine and approach to recycled plastics. If you'd like to know more, please contact us directly, or you can also check out the project website at wasteforwarmth.org. Andrew Lamb from our partner Field Ready will also talk about what it takes to scale solutions in the humanitarian sector a little later on in this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I feel like I'm going to keep saying that all these presentations are really interesting, but they really are. And I feel like there's just no limit to the use cases for plastic waste. So thank you for sharing your insights. Next up, we have Gemma Atherson. She is a consultant at IOM for water sanitation and hygiene. Welcome, Gemma.
Thanks, and good afternoon and good morning and good evening to everyone. As Sophia mentioned, my name is Gemma and I work for the International Organization for Migration within the Department of Operations and Emergencies Global WASH Support Team. And I'm working as well on an Innovation Norway funded project with the IOM e-waste project team titled Greening Humanitarian Responses through Recovery, Repair and Recycling of Solar Products in Displacement Settings. And we recognise that today's panel presentation is about plastics, but as most of you will probably know, a significant amount of solar products is plastics. And in any case, at a high level, many of the challenges and opportunities faced in the management of different aspects of waste are very similar, albeit with different technical details. So today I'll be sharing some lessons learned from this particular solar e-waste project as it relates to the management of plastics. And in recognising the significant impact humanitarian agencies have on solar and other wastes in displacement settings, as well as the negative human health and environmental impacts this causes, IOM aims to respond to this problem by finding a cost-effective solution, or in this case, solutions for the management of these products or components of the products through a circular economy approach. So as you can see from the slide here, IOM e-waste project aims to do this by gathering evidence to influence manufacturers of solar products to make their products more repairable or recyclable, which we can talk a little bit more about later on, by extending the life cycle of existing technologies and improving the waste management in displacement settings, creating jobs, supporting livelihoods, and providing business opportunities, as well as providing evidence to replicate this project in other settings, as well as to scale up beyond just solar products and their accessories to other types of electronic waste, such as mobile phones, but also in this case, other types of plastic, if it allows, as well as informing humanitarian sustainable procurement policies. So if we just go to the next slide. This slide is quite complicated, but I just wanted to put this on here. The results of the project to date have been about the analysis of the regulatory environment and the collection of field data, which I'll again talk about a bit later, as well as a market dialogue to identify stakeholders and assess what's already being done, as well as research analysis to identify barriers and opportunities for innovation. So this particular drawing that you see on the slide now was from our ideation workshop. And from this ideation workshop where we brought together all the stakeholders, we selected 3 submitted proposals to join IOM in the implementation phase of the project, which is scheduled to begin within the next 3 months, which looks at different aspects of the plastics and solar waste value stream. Thanks.
Thank you, Gemma. This infographic is super insightful into your ideation process. So I'm sure a lot of people might reach out to learn more about it. So we'll come back to you, Gemma, in a bit. But next up, I'd like to invite Anna back, Anna Livak from the ICRC, to share her project. Over to you,
Thank
Anna.
you. Thank you. So the polypropylene woven bag project is supported by the Norwegian Red Cross, and we're super excited about this project. It will be implemented by 3 partners, the ICRC, the UNHCR, and the WFP in the next 2 years. So just to give you some background information, the PP, let's call it this way faster, PP bags are commonly used by many humanitarian organizations, NGOs, even private companies to package food or commodities, and even some basic relief items. ICRC alone in 2018 has used or dispatched 150 metric tons of these bags to the field. The issue with these bags is that technically they are recyclable, but in reality they rarely are for many reasons. One of them being lack of infrastructure, as I mentioned before, in the context where we work. Other limitation is that these recycled PP bags cannot be used for food contact applications, so they're restricting really the circular economy approach. So the objective of this project is to find more sustainable alternatives to PP bags. Some of the key steps of this project will be to define requirements that the new solution, the sustainable solution, will have to meet. This includes technical specifications, so making sure that this product will meet the needs of the humanitarian action. Also some social criteria such as reusability or possibility to manufacture them in the locally, or economic criteria such as cost, and obviously the environmental considerations. So we will work with research and development specialists in labs, as well as packaging specialists to identify to define the specifications and also to identify potential solutions or alternatives to PP bags. And we will test up to 3 solutions in the field and select the ones that are the best and the ones that should be mainstreamed as much as possible within the humanitarian organizations. So this project aims to directly contribute to meeting the partners' sustainability commitments to reduce the plastic waste generation of the humanitarian interventions. At this stage, we have just launched this project. So at this stage, we have just recruited the project manager and held our kickoff meeting, and we're really looking forward to sharing the progress as well as lessons learned with any interesting parties in the next 2 years when the project will be implemented. So thank you. That's where I will just stop here. And if we have some questions, then maybe we can later discuss. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Anna. super exciting, and I'm sure we're all going to stay tuned to the progress of this project. And hopefully we can even scale up to Kenya. So I'm going to be following up with you on that. So next up, we have Tahar Kachebi, who is an associate WASH officer from the UNHCR. Welcome, Tahar.
Hi, thank you, Safia, and welcome everybody. So our project in the Saharawi refugee camps for plastic recycling started in 2019 with Norwegian innovation program, and the main reason of proposing this project is that the quantity of plastic waste generated in these camps is more than 1,700 tons per year. Currently, these plastics are mixed with other type of solid waste and transported to landfill areas 2, 3, and 5 kilometers away from the camps to be burned at low temperature, which is not a safe way to dispose the waste in the nature. And this has a negative impact on the environment and the health of the population. Therefore, the objective of this project is to preserve the environment and the health of the population with creating opportunities for income generation for the refugees. So, taking in consideration the humanitarian aspect in the Saharawi refugee camps and the context in the country, UNHCR, in consultation with different partners and consultant from the private sector, has identified adequate technologies and came up with a solution of using plastic waste to produce furniture such as tables and chairs to substitute for wood, as substitute for wood. Currently, this project is being implemented with 4 partners working in this sector within a circular economy business model that will encourage sustainable solutions while being an innovative source for employment. So more details may be shared later on in this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tahar, and great to see what you're doing. So that brings us to the end of our 5 presentations. These were all projects that have been funded by Innovation Norway. And listening to all the presentations, I think what's coming out clearly and strongly is the importance of key partnerships within the humanitarian sector, with government and even with the private sector. And then working with target communities, local communities, and mentoring and taking them through a process of job creation. That's where the sustainability is coming out really strongly. So it was nice to see that those are key factors that are coming out in all the presentations. So again, if you want to know more, feel free to use the Q&A chat box, and we'll get to answering your questions. And I think also the speakers' email addresses will also be shared if you want to reach out to them. So next up, we look at some of the important aspects of innovative partnerships and what makes them foster and sustain. So we have 3 exciting presentations coming up. And first off, I would like to invite Gemma up again to share her experience from IOM on the ecosystem of plastic waste management. Over to you, Gemma.
Thanks, Safia. And I guess I'll start off as identified by you in your introduction, and Anna as well from ICRC. I'll just recap that Humanitarian agencies supply masses of essential plastic products, you know, things like buckets, jerry cans, plastic sheeting, water bottles and solar lanterns and medical waste. And whilst they are purchased and distributed based on beneficiary needs assessments most of the time, there's currently little systems in place for their reuse, recovery or recycling of plastic and other wastes that are born from these humanitarian operations. As some of you probably know, the number of people in need of humanitarian assistance has tripled over the last decade. And at the same time, solid waste management has been identified as one of the most urgent global challenges and is only expected to grow, particularly for countries receiving that humanitarian assistance. And whilst the assistance provides essential aid to people affected by crisis and also offers opportunities towards longer term development goals, the countries or communities receiving assistance can often lack sufficient infrastructure or management systems to handle the waste, which means that humanitarian interventions can have unintended negative impacts, as we've seen from all of the speakers, on both human health and the environment. So just moving on to the next slide, we will look at the IOM e-waste project in terms of the needs assessments that we've been looking at through the solar waste stream mapping that's also applicable to the plastic waste as well. So as part of the e-waste project, we've undertaken field research and solar waste stream mapping across 5 displacement camps in Uganda and Kenya. And we found that the behaviour of individuals or households in regards to what they do when products are broken or how they dispose of products provides useful insights into numerous different types of waste and how they could be managed. So some of the behaviours that I'd like to point out, which you can see on the graph, is that the 2 most common responses when products stopped working was leaving them in the house or taking them to a repair shop, indicating that by taking products to a repair shop, motivations for reuse or repair exist, which can be capitalised upon in interventions, no matter what the waste type. Also, when disposing of waste, people appear to utilise the most convenient option. So throwing it in the bush and leaving it in the house have been the most common answers, with putting it in the bin being the most common answer in one camp, which indicates that convenience may be a key factor to consider in any behaviour change interventions. Thirdly, the option of repairing products themselves had a low response rate, indicating that users don't have the tools or spare parts or even capacity to fix products, which may be one of the reasons why products are disposed of rather than repaired, which highlights that a specific intervention point rather, for creating a more circular economy. So overall, the data showed us that the needs of users aren't being addressed sufficiently and could be captured more in product design, as well as through repair advocacy and training to improve the lifespan of products and reduce the amount of new solar products being distributed due to the ongoing linear model of procure, use and dispose, which I think you saw in the previous slide, and which we can talk about in a second. The results also showed, and as you can see from the different bar charts here, that each setting is really different, and therefore site-specific needs assessments really should be undertaken to allow interventions to be tailored to each specific context. So now looking at the ecosystem analysis, that was quite specific to the IOM e-waste project, but now I'll discuss the more broader ecosystem within which a circular economy sits. Sophia, if we can go to the next slide. So this includes the regulatory and legislative environment, as well as stakeholders involved, from beneficiaries to UN agencies to NGOs to private organisations, startups, training organisations and academia. So the broader ecosystem that impacts waste management also includes local culture and practices, given these are critical in defining how people behave and what motivates them, as well as an analysis of external threats such as natural disasters, security and geography, all of which can impact waste management logistics, particularly in humanitarian settings. So just in this slide, I've provided an example of some of the relevant plastic waste management regulations and strategies. So for international goals and strategies, there's obviously the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as an example of the latest strategy for sustainability management in the United Nations system. At the organizational level, organizations put in plans to deliver on these international goals. For example, at IOM, we have the IOM Environmental Sustainability Program, which has a focus on clean energy, water and waste management. And other organizations are building sustainable procurement into their organizational manuals and are designing tenders that ask suppliers to provide sustainable solutions. Thirdly, there are also numerous international regulations that limit the transport of waste. Most significantly to the plastic waste is probably the Basel Convention, enacted in 1992, which, as most of us are familiar with, aims to reduce hazardous waste generation and its transboundary movement. And there's been specific amendments to this to better control plastic waste in 2020. At the national level, governments are also implementing regulations that restrict the use of plastics. For example, plastics have been restricted or banned in Kenya, Rwanda, and Tanzania, which have directly affected some humanitarian operations. And in some cases, organizations can no longer import products containing plastics. So I guess this ecosystem analysis of the regulatory and legislative environment highlights that solutions can't be developed in isolation from this wider context, and it needs to be the programs need to be continuously adapting. So there's need to find solutions to the plastic waste issue that draws the line between meeting international and national obligations, whilst also adjusting humanitarian programs to simultaneously achieve the life-saving humanitarian principle of humanitarian response. And that, as I mentioned, adaptive programming is required to adhere to these international and national level regulatory contexts. And more importantly, even when there aren't regulations on plastic and waste, as is the case in some countries, to simply do the right thing and limit the generation of waste. So I guess that sets the more broader regulatory and legislative environment. And on the next slide, if we can move to the next one, we look at the stakeholder analysis and local context. So if you recall in the first slide, we looked at the linear waste chain of plastics and other waste in the humanitarian sector from manufacture to disposal, which you can see in the bold lines here that go vertically along the screen. And I've also added some other lines that represent additional aspects of the waste value chain that are required to create a circular economy. So looking back to the IOM e-waste project, these companies are some of the stakeholders that are part of the solar e-waste stream as an output of the market dialogue that we've undertaken. And stakeholder strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and barriers to participation in reducing solar waste were also mapped and highlighted. And it indicated that changes at the system level as well as the individual level are required, which includes changes in manufacturing to improve lifespan and repairability of products, changes in humanitarian procurement, changes in policy and regulatory requirements to enable sustainable plastic waste management, and changes in individual behaviour at the local level. So hopefully that's painted a picture of the humanitarian sector needs and broader ecosystem for plastic waste management. And I'll now hand over to my colleagues or back to Sophia to further discuss what can be done about it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Gemma. I think you've painted a really clear picture on the ecosystem analysis, and what's coming out clearly is that the need to have partners and actors at every stage if we're really going to make this work. But definitely promising and encouraging to see that regulations, policies are coming up in different countries. So great, thank you for your insights, and if there are any questions, we'll shoot them to you at the end. So you ended up talking about the circular economy, and on that note, I'd like to hand it over to Jonas Engberg, who is the Director of Partnerships and Innovation at CARE in Denmark. Over to you, Jonas.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you very much. Following up on what Clotilda presented earlier, I would like to take us or take you through some of the aspects that we have encountered and have initiated as part of the project that with establishing a production unit for repurposing plastics within the Chakwali settlement in Uganda. And it's very important for me to say that part of why we set out on this journey was very much because we identified together with the refugees that there's a potential there. There's a very limited collection of waste, as has been pointed out by numerous presenters. There's very, very little handling of plastic and general plastic pollution, as you all mentioned and have heard throughout, is a problem. It clogs waterway, it pollutes the agricultural system. And the way of getting rid of it is very much incineration without any type of energy recovery, of course, open fire incineration or landfill. So there's a potential. We know that plastic, if handled in the right way, have the capability of recycling somewhat if the right technology is put in place. And then in addition to that, there's an expressed need for increased livelihoods, jobs, job creation, things like that is very much a need for the refugees in the Chakwali settlement, which is why we kind of embedded all that into this project. It's quite similar to what was presented also in the, and I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but Saharawi refugee camp. But it just goes to show that we are somewhat agreeing on the potential. Anyway, what I wanted to share was very much that we've chosen a participatory approach to this and method, a human-centered design approach, so that if you want to put it like that, but very much through the conversations, through the engagement with the refugees, identified not just the product range, but indeed also the market potentials, because it was important for us, and still is, that what we come up with in the end, what we help construct, is a sustainable, self-reliant business model for this unit. It should not be dependent on future funding. The operational aspects should be covered within the whole business setup. So I wanted to touch briefly on that. But the business and market development, of course, includes identifying current price point. There is an existing market within the settlement of not only the influx of what we as civil society organizations bring in, but also what refugees, and as you heard Clotilde mention, it's around 130,000 people, what they trade on the local market, identifying price points, identify market elasticity, material availability, and all of that with the purpose of constructing a business model, a production line within the unit itself that is self-sustained and sustainable over time. Next slide, please. One of the products that Clotilde mentioned, and I thought it'd be interesting for all of us to kind of dive a little bit deeper into how it can be turned into a sustainable business model, is roof tiles. There's a need for better roofing. Tarpaulins, as was mentioned earlier, is an issue due to UV radiation and other things. It deteriorates and it needs repurposing every sort of annually. So roof tiles was a product that was brought up as something that the refugees participating thought would be an interesting product for the unit to produce. There is a market for roof tiles already, and the current price point in the settlement is almost 9,000 Ugandan shilling per square meter. That is sort of where the price point that we could then work towards was set. We always, with this unit, have an ambition that the price points of the product we produce, or that is produced within the unit, is lower or are lower than the current price points, and thereby increasing the possibility of competing with commercially produced products. If you would press forward, please. The total cost of producing 1 square meter of roof tile within our unit is divided into two aspects. 2,000 Ugandan shilling makes up the material cost because we work with a compensation model. So we compensate for the collection with collected material. And then the total production costs is almost 3,000 Ugandan shilling. That brings us to a total manufacturing cost of around 5,000 Ugandan shilling. If we then work with a retail sales price of these units, at around 6,000 Ugandan shilling, which is highly compatible compared to other roof tiles that is being marketed in the settlement. It's around 31% lower than the current price points. The unit, not me, but the unit itself makes a profit of a little over 1,000 Ugandan shilling per square meter and a retail margin of 18%. Combined with the other production lines that we are working with, the design of the products that is being developed and the business model in itself, it ends up adding together so that the entirety of the units, the financial aspects of the units, so the initial capex and operational aspects, including maintenance, repair, service, and other things, brings the units ROI to 10.7 years. If all goes to plan, and it doesn't always, but at least that's what we're targeting. What we find extremely interesting with this, and what I cannot understate, what I want to underline, is that it goes to show that it's possible to create sustainable businesses even within a settlement such as the Chakwali settlement, where price points needs to be as low as possible. What we are also doing with this is sort of creating a total circular business setup that enables the value creation to stay within the settlement and with the people who need it the most. The regenerative economy, circular economy, but also an economy that is in balance with the surrounding nature, is something that we very much target with this project. And I'm very excited about it. And thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Right on time. Thank you, Jonas. That was really interesting. And I think your excitement really came through, and it's got us all very excited as well. I feel like it's really interesting to see your process in terms of costing and developing the business model. And I feel like there are a lot of communities that could benefit from this. So thank you definitely for sharing. So up next, we're going to talk to the private sector. The SDGs have carved out a key role for private sector partners in achieving the goals, and a lot of private sector actors have risen up to the challenge. And I think being in the humanitarian sector, we're also seeing a lot of private sector partnerships coming through. So excited to hear from our next speakers. We have Marina from UNHCR. We have Gard from Human Rights, but representing NGI. And we have Jan from Precious Plastics. So over to you, Marina, for this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Safia. Well, good afternoon, and thank you so much for having chosen to spend your valuable time with us today. Well, my name's Marina Villuendas, and I work in reporting for UNHCR Algeria, so I'll be facilitating this small panel discussion today. Well, we're very pleased to have been invited to such an interesting event among such wonderful initiatives. And well, before we dive into the discussion, I'm going to tell you a bit about the situation in the 5 Saharawi refugee camps. So the Saharawi refugee displacement is one of the most protracted in the world. And at its 46th year, the situation in the camps is compromised by their remoteness, limited livelihood opportunities, as we've heard before, and harsh environmental conditions with very frequent sandstorms and floods. So as you can imagine, waste disposal is pretty much of a challenge, especially when it comes to big amount of plastic that can be found in well, hails like the ones you can see in the picture to the left. Well, to find a solution and tackle this problem, UNHCR, the refugee agency, has engaged with Innovation Norway, NGI, and Precious Plastics on a new plastic recycling project in the camps. So I'm here with Jan and with Gard, who will be now presenting a bit of their organizations, about themselves, and maybe about the roles in the project before we start. What do you think? Gard, do you want to start?
Hang on.
You're muted.
There we go. Yes, I can start. Thank you, Marina. Yes, so my name is Gard Svigum-Sorby. I run my own little company called Human Brights, and I am contracted to NGI, which is a partner in this project, to oversee the technical aspects of the project from the UNHCR side. And so my role in this has been to work on the development of the technical solutions and follow up the process from there.
Great. And what about you, Jan? Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm Jan, and I'm representing Precious Plastic on this project. So yeah, we are a foundation that developed since around 7 years a simpler solution to recycle plastic. And overall, we're an open source movement. That means like every machines, every techniques, every how-to, we document it and we put it online and for free for everybody to be able to get inspired and replicate it. So yeah, with time we created kind of a community of local recyclers around the world, and mostly in areas where industrial solutions are not viable. So yeah, on this project, I'm managing the provision of any machines, and also going on site to train people to use these machines and make them sustainable in time.
Great. So thank you both for this. Then if you agree, I'm just going to jump in with the first question. Okay, so what were the most important factors that you considered in the preparation of the project on plastic recycling in Tindouf? And what I mean was, what was the process and how did you come up with this particular solution? So maybe Gard, would you like to go first?
Sure. Well, firstly, of course, as Tahar explained earlier in the session, is that waste in general is a massive problem, as we've seen through all the presentations here in many of the refugee settings around the world, and plastic pollution in particular. So with the incineration creating local emissions that can be toxic, and livestock eating plastic and dying from it, is obviously a very pressing issue for the refugees there. And so the details of the waste streams and fractions were mapped very elegantly by Engineers Without Borders on a mission there to the camps to do that base study. And based on that, and with through discussions with myself, with NGI and the UNHCR, with the UNHCR having a very intimate knowledge of the conditions in place and knowing the refugees directly, we could start the whole process of developing a solution. And through these discussions, we've been keeping ideas, throwing ideas away, and like across our different sectors, myself representing the private sector and UNHCR being an organization, we've drawn on our other experiences. We're involved. I am involved in a few other with NGI, other recycling projects, and in addition to this, as part of the Humanitarian Innovation Program from Innovation Norway, the market dialogues has been a thing, which is we've been talking with people from companies in the private sector and trying to find inspiration and ideas, and which has been very interesting and quite fruitful. And we were actually investigating some of those things that we learned there to maybe put in place in the camps. And so after all this, we have landed on landed on making a recycling facility. So that will employ refugees and a collection scheme that will include them, and the production itself having the refugees included through the whole process. And so we will be producing firstly sheets for school desks from reused plastic, and I'm sure that Jan will get into the specifics of the solution later. And so when we landed all this, I was big part of preparing the tender documents for the procurement process, which where we had that operational sustainability very much in mind, with using machines, solutions, etc., that could be easily learnt, that could be easily operated, could be easily built, and not the least fixed when they break. And so with that in mind, we wrote the tender, and as lucky as we were, Precious Plastic bid and they won it.
Sounds great. And did you encounter any challenges during this process? Maybe Jan can tell us?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is the first one that we will have will be the plastic recycling by itself is a challenge because it's really hard to make it sustainable, and this anywhere in the world. So yeah, firstly, because you're collecting and sorting the plastic, as we already see, there's like a lot of different type of plastic, and this becomes a very complex task to identify and sort them and then process each of them separately. And then also because then we compete and with virgin plastic somehow that is directly related to the oil price, and then that make it very hard to compete with. So project and the technique we developed, we decided also to scaling it down and simplifying technique that already exist and are already known, and that will allow actually to get the people get more empowered and get more ownership about these techniques, and then that make them go through this challenge and not trying to compete in a worldwide market, but really to anchor the project locally. That generally is what make them sustainable. So usually what we do, and this is the second phase of the second big challenge that we had here, is like we on site, so we are also able to get a better understanding of the needs and that there is that is there. And of course here with the model we all know that was not possible to do, which give us a little bit like some blurriness into the project. But hopefully also this project is already well documented since a while by the UNHCR, by Engineers Without Borders. So we were able to actually lean on some very good studies, and we actually had like a very good vision of the project, of the needs and the problematic there. So we were able to get the project well suited for the context.
I see. And regarding the proposed solution, what do you think will be the direct impact on the environment? And how do you think that refugees can benefit from the project?
Well, firstly, for the environmental part, obviously the main objective of the project is to remove plastic from the ground and from the bellies of animals. And so this is of course a top priority, and but of course when you collect all this plastic, it has to go somewhere, and that's what the facility is meant for. So firstly, it's removing the plastic. When we're prolonging the life of the plastic, giving it new purpose, sort of practical purpose, you sort of postpone that the time until the plastic is burnt. And so that for another cycle, we are saving this, we are capturing that carbon within the plastic still. So we're avoiding that the potential CO2 emissions directly from burning the plastic. And in a place like Tindouf, there aren't an abundance of trees. It's not like there's much dense forest that you can just cut down and make wood from. So by displacing wood and using using plastic instead is actually saving some trees and providing providing a practical solution for something that's is needed. And so when it comes to the refugees themselves, of course, it provides an income opportunity in all of the steps in the process, from collecting to shredding to production, etc. And of course, the training, as Jan also mentioned, like creating that ownership to the machines is very, very important. In addition to learning a skill, we're also setting up quite a simple metals workshop intended for customizing production and learning to use the tools of that simple workshop. You're actually learning a life skill, and so with that workshop, they can also adapt the production how they feel is appropriate in the time to come. So yeah, that's just a few of the benefits. There are so many.
There are not few benefits, as you said. There are many ways to even escalate this project. So Jan, do you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I could maybe like add a little bit more detail into exactly how we would organize this space, because we really wanted to make a place that will recycle the plastic from its waste to really getting this final product. So it's really gonna be in 5 steps, which is what we find everywhere for the recycled plastic. So the first will be to sort it, then we will shred the plastic, clean it, and then melt it into a new product and process it. Of course, then to high-tech solutions like as I said before, the main problem with plastic is the sorting. And then here, a very high-tech solution with robots and infrared analysis is not really an option. So the sorting will still remain a very manual task and will really be supported by training of the people to make them able to recognize the plastic and sort it by type. And what we expect is that within time, this knowledge will also be spread within the camps, and then we hope, and we're also working toward that this plastic is sorted directly as its source. And then the second step is shredding it. So then it's just like breaking down the plastic into workable flakes. And then this we will install actually 6 machines that will allow to either process multiple plastic types and color at the same time, or also, as we are in a context with multiple locations, to dispatch these shredders in different locations to actually make the collation more efficient. As we really want to, we're aiming for also high quality product at the end that we can really rely on. So we installed some washing station. But of course, we're in a situation where water is not necessarily a very abundant resource. We're gonna use, and we developed, especially for this project, a closed loop washing system. Then we are at the interesting phase of the project that we collected, we cleaned, and we sorted all these flakes also by colors. So now we're gonna be able to melt them into sheets and through 2 presses. And these sheets then can be very easily walked through, and we can walk them a little bit like we will do with wood, like MDF or plywood, which is also not really a local resources in that case. So it's a very good substitute to this project. And as Gard said, the end goal, or at least the first end goal, will be to produce table and bench for school. So replacing the wood in these 2 benches. And a last point I would also like to say for this project is that we always keep in mind as well the upgradability of the project, or being able to
escalate
or escalate. Exactly, that was the word I was looking for. And each machine actually that we provide, they follow our principle. All our machines are like that. They are small and they are simple. It is as small and as simple as we can do. And that means if everything is going good, then we can easily increase the number and just put more small machine, and then we can increase progressively the production. And also, yeah, their simpliness make them, as Gard says, very important for this context when it's remote. They are easy to be repaired and even upgraded. As like, yeah, we continue to develop this regularly, and every time we document and we share for free any upgrade or any new techniques or any improvement that we can have on these machines and techniques.
Perfect. So the idea would be to have a constellation of different workshops across the 5 refugee camps in the future.
Exactly.
Fingers crossed. Then thanks so
Yeah.
much to both of you. Huh? If there's nothing else, I'm going to hand over to Safia. And well, thank you so much, everyone, for listening.
Thank you so much, Marina, Gard, and Jan. That was really interesting, and I wish we had more time to go into it. But I'd encourage everybody to visit a website if you have one, or even the individual organization websites. I know there's a lot of information on there. So thank you so much. We're running out of time, and I want to keep enough time for questions. So I'll quickly hand over to Andrew, sorry, who will speak about what should the sector do next and how do we scale some of these new solutions. So over to you, Andrew.
Thanks very much, and thanks to all the previous speakers in the session today. There's been a lot of answers to the question about how we scale and what we should be doing next as a sector within some of the analysis that we've heard in the last sort of 40 minutes. I think that there are 3 angles, we should be looking at, and it fits often appropriately with the themes of HNPW. Localization, it's absolutely key to the success of scaling lots of these innovations, and we've heard a hint of how that might be done just in the last few points of the previous discussion. We need to treat plastics in this sector as a disaster, in fact. And then the third thing is about thinking in terms of a system instead of in terms of projects, which is actually not necessarily what the humanitarian sector is designed to do. So on localization, we've heard from a series of innovators today, but there are boat makers in Cameroon. There's AI plastic detection systems in Uganda. There's pothole repairs being done in Southern Europe, and plastic panels being made in the Philippines. There's a lot of entrepreneurs, groups, companies that are doing this on a day-to-day basis. We need to buy from them. We need to become the market for these products. The humanitarian aid sector, I don't think sometimes realizes how much money it does have to be able to scale up these innovations. I know Innovation Norway has published reports on the procurement of innovation. There is a session coming up in this slot in 1 week's time on the Local Procurement Learning Partnership on the 28th of April. Which deals with some of the procurement questions that Gemma mentioned in her session. But we have to recognize that our types of organizations, humanitarian organizations like Field Ready, like UNHCR, like CARE, don't have the right kind of business models to scale up some of these innovations. This is a viable, plastics recycling is a viable commercial sector. And that is shown because it's happening in countries around the world. And that's why these entrepreneurs and local groups and local companies are getting into it. The important thing to remember, though, is that we have to not think in terms of scaling to be big, but scaling to be widespread. And that's why localization comes in. So we're looking, I think, as a sector at trying to get to technology solutions that can consume, say, 4 tons of plastic from a medium to large refugee camp every day. That sort of scale. And I think that's when it becomes really quite viable. And just having a number of small and medium, not micro facilities in humanitarian responses is the way to go. The second part of what I think about when I think about what should the sector do next, we have to recognize plastics now as a disaster. Hashtag plastics crisis. It is a technological disaster, just like a plane crash, just like a building collapse. It is a hazard in the sense that it causes health issues, malaria outbreaks, for example. It causes floods when plastic blocks up drainage systems, and as we've seen recently in Bangladesh, it could be a contributor to outbreaks of fire. So I think that there is a need for the humanitarian sector to think of plastics as a new kind of hazard that it has to respond to, alongside natural disasters and conflict issues. And then, my last point, we have to think more in terms of systems and not projects. That means that, and we've heard hints of this in the session today, we need to be thinking in terms of non-linear approaches. This isn't a straight demand and supply procurement transaction. Those are actually what's needed now, but it will be something that evolves and emerges in a non-linear way as we develop this really important thread to the humanitarian sector's work. So we need to be thinking much more in terms of systems and infrastructures than projects if we're really going to enable this to happen. Some of the practical things that have been mentioned in this session around the procurement processes, tightening standards in some areas, actually loosening standards in other areas, thinking about appropriateness as much as we can. We have to keep doing better at prevention, as we've heard. Distributing plastic bottles is out, investing as we should, as we want to in the sector, in piped water supply systems and long life safe water containers. Educating children and sensitizing children to the challenges of plastic waste. The stories we tell our children will define the societies that we all grow up in. And I think that our relationship with plastic waste will change. It is a generational issue. I hope that's not too abstract an answer to those questions.
No, it's a wonderful way to bring the session to a close, and I know myself, along with a lot of other people, are going to agree with what you said. So thank you so much for your insights, Andrew. And if there are any questions, we're going to shoot them your way. So we'll get to the questions now. We have a couple of questions from Martin Gard. And the first one goes to Igor about the waste to warmth project. How do you deal with the flammability of the plastic insulation material? Perhaps you can answer that before we go to the next one.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. It's obviously central to our development, our product development, when we're working with capturing air in a petroleum-based insulation panel. But we've tried not to introduce any fire retardant additives to the melted kind of plastic mix, as this would also contaminate the plastic and prevent further recycling after the end of life of these products. Our strategy now is using disused standard issued plastic sheeting tarpaulin to encapsulate the material, and then rely on the fire retardant qualities inherent in this. It's also a lot about the placement, the amount and state of compression of the plastic that will influence fire retardancy. We're currently sending samples of this insulation product to labs for testing, in accordance with standards applied to furniture and building materials, which we're hopeful we can pass. And this also just to understand the strategy and if that works. We've yet to set fire to full-scale shelters with these products installed, but this is also a necessary step for us before we introduce any of these products to anyone's living space. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And then there was another question from Martin Gard again, who has a question on the use of small-scale machines to remodel and reformulate the plastic. Are these machines robust enough, or is it better to use more expensive units? Gard, maybe I can throw this question to you.
Yeah, sure. Yes, I think the answer to that question is sort of in two parts. Jan, whom I was speaking together with earlier, he's in fact been involved in the actual making of these small scale machines. So in terms of robustness, these machines are made from steel. They are made from thick. It's in particular, it's the shredding that is subject to the most wear and to the most sort of stresses on the materials, etc. And it depends on what you shred and for how long robustness is defined. I'm sure if you contact Jan, he can give you some deep details on it. The other bit is with robustness is whether you want something to last or not. If you want the production to last, yes, the machine can break, but if you've taught someone how to fix it, they actually might. If you buy a more expensive and larger machine and no one knows how to fix it, it can, when that breaks, it's just going to stay there. And this is what we've seen. This is what we've seen in many cases, is that big and expensive machines have a tendency of not getting fixed. And that is sort of the core idea of the operational or technical sustainability of this of our project that we're really insisting on. So I hope that gives you a bit of, I don't know, Jan, if you want to add something to that.
No, I think you made it off. So yeah, I would say the small scale is not necessarily making it weaker. The small scale is more related to its productivity. So yeah, we do smaller machines, but they are also designed for that, and we calculated them so they don't break. And if it's happened, because this is machines and every machine breaks at one point of its life, then we really focused into every components, every technique, everything that is into this machine. Also its accessibility, how do we dismantle it, is easy. And I would say anyone which is a little bit handy will be able to make it work again, either the same or in a hacky way somehow, but they will really work for sure.
I can add to that. I have personally witnessed illiterate refugees being able to learn how to take these machines to both assemble and disassemble these machines multiple times. So this is it's pretty. You don't need an engineering degree to operate them, and we truly believe that will makes a better case for operational sustainability for sure.
Definitely. Andrew, I feel like you want to say something.
Just a quick thing on this, on the scale of the machines. One of the factors that we have encountered when using or trying to scale up micro machines, sort of what I like to describe as human scale machines, is the energy consumption. So it depends. You have to match the size of the machine with the product you're trying to make, and the sheer quantity of plastic you're trying to process. There isn't a question about energy input into having a large number of small machines as opposed to one medium-sized machine that might do, say, 4 tons a day, or a process that might do 4 tons a day. You really have to look at the energy output, because you could be changing plastic waste into energy waste, and you know, that you can get significant benefits and economies of scale on. So look at the application before deciding on the scale of the machine.
Thank you, Andrew. And Jonas, I wanted to come to you next because you've used a different technique to build the roof tiles. Maybe you can share your experience.
Yes, I just wanted to add very briefly on the energy consumption. Absolutely, we don't want to replace one pollutant with something else, which is why it's been our vision and also how we designed the unit that everything runs on solar, with battery packages or accumulators to accumulate energy for the not so sunny days and all of that, and that is balanced, so it should be able to function and handle all plastic waste generated within the settlement, which is in this case is around 1 ton a week. It's not huge scale, and absolutely agree with Andrew on that part, but at least it can work in this context. Yes, the roof tiles is done in a pressing solution. But the unit also includes precious plastic products, actually, or the machines for the molding, the shredding and molding of plastics, and we are very happy with it. But yeah, there was another question. I don't know, Sophia, if someone asked about sort of the financial aspect of things and if the recyclers are making money. As I understood the question, as very, very important for me to say that yes, absolutely, everyone who's employed in this unit, the entirety of the manufacturing costs, collection and retail costs are factored into the price points, and that we are able to create sustainable jobs for the people. So yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much. So we have time for one more question before we wrap up, and then we will reach out bilaterally in case of any other conversations or questions. So the next question is to Anna from Patricia Gomez, and she has a question about creating tarps from biomass waste and eco-sustainable material.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this question. So exactly this project, Tarpaulin project, is about mapping different alternative materials that can be used to produce tarpaulins, and then to identify the material that keeps the same performance and functionality of the PP tarpaulins, so polypropylene tarpaulins. And then yes, to see how they can perform, if they can perform the functions that the PP polytarpaulin does, and then just to, if that works, to see if this can be mainstream and used more broadly in the humanitarian sector in our activities. Part of this project would also be to identify the environmental impact by doing the LCA assessment of the tarpaulin. So let's say if this biomass based tarpaulin doesn't work, what other aspects of producing PP tarpaulins can we tackle to reduce the environmental impact? So this is broadly, in a nutshell, what is this project about, and let's see where it leads us, as there's plenty of bio-based materials that are not necessarily biodegradable. So there is also a question about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And I think Patricia's also mentioned that they have a project that they're implementing on sustainable tarpaulins. So maybe it would be great for you guys to also connect further.
Sure, happy to.
Okay, great. So guys, we are at time. We knew that 1.5 hours wasn't going to be enough, but of course we had to try. But I think just to wrap up, it's clear that plastic waste pollution is a challenge and a problem no matter where we are in the world. I mean, here in Kenya, in our oceans, we're getting plastic waste from Southeast Asia and India. So unless we come together and look for solutions and work in partnerships together, where this is going to be then a challenge that we're going to face for years to come. So I think what's important to take away from this is innovative partnerships that are sustainable. We need to engage with private sector and with government as humanitarian organizations to influence and advocate for stronger policies and legislation around plastic waste management. And as users of plastic within our organizations, we just need to be more aware of how we manage our plastic waste. So just like to then thank all our speakers and the participants that stuck around for the 1.5 hours. We really appreciate your participation and your questions, and we will reach out bilaterally and create connections to the speakers so that you can take these conversations further. And a huge thank you to the Geneva Environment Network for hosting this session on WebEx. And yeah, I think that's it from us. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.